It was close to midnight, and I was mindlessly scrolling through Instagram. The glow of my phone was the only light in the room, casting strange shadows on the walls. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, just passing time before heading to bed. As usual, the feed was filled with perfectly filtered vacation photos, workout routines, and random memes. My thumb hovered over the screen, poised to swipe up again, when I froze. My profile picture wasn't the one I had chosen earlier. It was different, wrong. The familiar photo of me smiling against a clear blue sky was gone. Instead, there was a face I didn't recognize. Pale skin, hollow cheeks, dark, sunken eyes that seemed to stare through the screen. For a moment, I thought it was a glitch, some random bug in the app. I refreshed the page, but the face was still there. It wasn't my face. I stared at it, my chest tightening. I don't know how long I sat there staring before snapping out of it. My fingers moved quickly, switching to edit mode. I changed it back to my original picture, the one I'd uploaded weeks ago. I hit save, and for a moment, everything seemed normal again. But then, a notification popped up. A direct message. "Why did you do that?" That was all it said. 5 words from an account I didn't recognize. No profile picture, no posts. Just a blank username with a string of random numbers. I didn't respond. Instead, I locked my phone and tossed it onto the bed. It was just a troll, I told myself. Someone messing around. People hack accounts all the time. It was probably nothing. The next morning, I woke up with that uneasy feeling still hanging over me. I reached for my phone, half hoping I'd imagined the whole thing. The message was still there. So was my profile picture, unchanged, as it should be. I laughed at myself. I was being paranoid. Maybe I'd been tired and overreacted. I went about my day as usual. My mornings were always the same. Coffee, a quick scroll through social media, and then settling down to work. My job didn't require much, just a laptop and an internet connection. Instagram, in particular, was a huge part of what I did. Social connections, brand collaborations, occasional freelance gigs. It all flowed through that app. By lunchtime, I'd all but forgotten the strange message from the night before. I even told myself I should laugh about it later with my friends. But that evening, as I settled back onto the couch and opened Instagram again, the unease returned. My profile picture had changed. This time it was worse. It was my face, but not my face. The features were mine, my nose, my mouth, but everything was distorted, twisted in a way that didn't make sense. My eyes were dark, like they had been smudged out with charcoal. The corners of my mouth stretched unnaturally wide into something that wasn't a smile. My stomach dropped. This wasn't some random hack. No one would bother to edit a photo like that. It was personal. I changed it back, my hands shaking. The same picture of me smiling against the blue sky replaced the grotesque version. I stared at the screen for a long time, waiting for another message, but none came. Not yet, anyway. I called my best friend, Jason, to tell him what was happening. "Someone's messing with my Instagram," I said. "They're changing my profile picture." He laughed. "Are you serious? Dude, it's probably just a glitch. Or maybe you got hacked. Change your password and move on." "I already did," I said, pacing the room. "But this feels different. It's not just random. They're messing with my pictures, my face." Jason wasn't buying it. "You're overthinking this. Look, if it freaks you out, just deactivate your account for a while, or better yet, stop using Instagram. Problem solved." I sighed. Jason had a way of brushing things off like they didn't matter. I wanted to believe he was right, that I was making a big deal out of nothing. But when I hung up the phone, the anxiety didn't go away. I spent the rest of the evening trying to secure my account. New password, 2-factor authentication, the works. I even Googled Instagram hacks to see if anyone else had experienced something similar. The answers were all the same, just generic advice about staying secure online. Nothing about this. For a while, everything seemed calm. My picture stayed the same, no new messages. I started to think maybe I had scared them off, whoever they were. But just as I was about to call it a night, my phone buzzed. A notification from Instagram. Another direct message. I didn't want to open it, but I couldn't help myself. My thumb hovered over the screen before tapping. "It's not a prank." The message was from my own account. When the sun rose the next morning, the sense of relief I felt was short-lived. I had hoped daylight would erase the unease, but it lingered like a dull ache. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, half hoping it would provide answers. My profile picture was still the same, the one I'd changed it back to last night. But the question gnawed at me. How had it changed in the first place? I decided to dig deeper. There had to be an explanation. Maybe I'd overlooked something, or maybe someone had access to my account without my knowledge. I opened the Instagram app again, navigating to the settings. I scoured every option: privacy settings, login history, connected devices. Nothing seemed out of place. No unauthorized logins, no suspicious activity. Everything appeared normal. But it wasn't normal. I knew that. Frustrated, I went to the help section and found a way to contact Instagram support. I typed out a detailed message explaining what had happened. I asked if they could check for any unusual activity on my account or provide insight into what was going on. After I hit send, I stared at the screen, waiting for a response that didn't come. The rest of the day passed in a haze. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept wandering back to my phone. Every few minutes I'd glance at it, half expecting the profile picture to change again. It didn't. By evening, I convinced myself that whatever had happened was over. Maybe the account was secure now. Maybe it was just a glitch, like Jason had said. But that night, as I sat on the couch scrolling through my feed, I felt my stomach drop. The profile picture had changed again. This time, it was worse. It was still my face, but it wasn't mine. The features were warped, stretched unnaturally, as if someone had taken my photo and twisted it into something unrecognizable. My eyes were hollow, my mouth twisted into a grotesque smirk. The background was unfamiliar, a dark, empty space that seemed to stretch endlessly. I stared at it, unable to look away. My hands trembled as I changed it back. The process felt slower this time, like the app was resisting my attempts to fix it. When the original picture finally appeared, I let out a shaky breath. But the relief didn't last. Within seconds, another notification popped up, a direct message. It was from the same account as before, the one with no profile picture or posts. This time the message read, "You can't stop it." I sat frozen, staring at the words. My mind raced, searching for answers, but none of them made sense. How could someone have this level of control over my account? And why me? I didn't respond to the message. Instead, I locked my phone and tried to convince myself to forget about it. But forgetting wasn't an option. The next morning, I woke up to something far worse. The profile picture had changed again, but this time, it showed me in a place I'd never been before. I was standing in the middle of a desolate road surrounded by thick fog. My face was pale, my eyes wide with fear. It wasn't just disturbing, it was impossible. I hadn't been anywhere near a place like that. The photo didn't exist, but there it was, on my profile for the world to see. I deleted it immediately, my hands shaking as I replaced it with the original picture. This wasn't a hack. This was something else, something I couldn't explain. I decided to call Jason again. He was my go-to whenever I felt overwhelmed, the one person who always managed to calm me down. But when I told him what was happening, he laughed it off like before. "Dude, it's probably some kind of advanced phishing scam," he said. "Just stop using the app for a while. Problem solved." "I don't think you get it," I said, pacing the living room. "These aren't just random pictures. They're personal, and they're changing on their own." Jason sighed. "Okay, so what do you want me to do? Call Instagram for you? Look, if it's freaking you out this much, just delete your account. You don't need Instagram to survive." I hung up feeling more alone than ever. Jason didn't believe me. No one would. How could they? Even I didn't fully understand what was happening. That night, the disturbances escalated. I was sitting at my desk, trying to distract myself with a movie, when the lights in my apartment started acting strange. They weren't just dimming. They were pulsating, going from blindingly bright to almost pitch black in seconds. I tried to ignore it, chalking it up to an electrical issue. But then came the sounds. It started faintly, like a low hum just on the edge of hearing. Then it grew louder, more distinct footsteps. Slow, deliberate, and coming from inside the apartment. My heart raced as I got up to check. Every room was empty, every door locked. There was no one else here. The cold spots came next. As I walked through the apartment, patches of icy air seemed to cling to me, making the hairs on my arms stand up. It felt like someone was watching me, standing just out of sight, waiting. I called Jason again, desperation seeping into my voice. This time, he agreed to come over. He joked about bringing a ghost hunting kit. But I didn't laugh. I just needed someone here, someone to make me feel less alone. When Jason arrived, I explained everything in detail. He listened, though I could tell he still wasn't taking it seriously. He suggested we go through the account settings together, just to make sure I hadn't missed anything. We sat on the couch, my laptop open, going through every option. "See? Nothing out of the ordinary," Jason said, scrolling through the settings. "No weird logins, no unauthorized apps, your account's fine." "It's not fine," I said, pointing at the screen. "What about the pictures? What about the messages?" Jason shrugged. "Could be some kind of AI. Maybe someone's using deepfake tech to mess with you. It's creepy, yeah, but it's not supernatural." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But the pit in my stomach told me otherwise. After a while, Jason decided to stay the night. He said it was to make sure the ghost didn't get me. But I could tell he just didn't want to leave me in the state I was in. I was grateful for the company, even if his jokes made me roll my eyes. At some point, I must have fallen asleep on the couch because I woke up to an empty apartment. Jason was gone. His jacket was still draped over the chair and his phone charger was plugged into the wall, but there was no sign of him. "Jason?" I called out, my voice echoing through the silence. No answer. I grabbed my phone and tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. Panic set in as I searched the apartment, opening every door, checking every corner. He wasn't here. He couldn't have just disappeared. Then my phone buzzed. A notification from Instagram. My hands shook as I opened it, dreading what I might see. It was a direct message from my own account. The image attached stopped me cold. It was Jason. His face was twisted in terror, his eyes wide, his mouth open as though he were screaming. The background was dark, but I could make out faint shapes, shadows, figures, something that didn't belong. I dropped the phone, my chest tightening. This wasn't just a prank. This wasn't a hack. Something was here, and it wasn't done with me yet. When I decided to stay offline, I thought I'd finally have some control. I deleted the Instagram app from my phone, logged out on my laptop, and even disconnected the Wi-Fi for good measure. But it didn't matter. The silence didn't last. It started with my phone. I'd locked it and placed it face down on the table, trying to convince myself it was just a piece of metal and glass. But then it lit up. Not just a notification light. No, the screen turned on completely. I grabbed it and saw the Instagram app, back on my home screen. I hadn't reinstalled it. My hands shook as I swiped through my phone. It was logged back in, as if I'd never deleted it. I stared at the screen, my breath shallow, and opened the app. My profile picture had changed again. This time it wasn't even me. The photo showed a dark figure standing in the corner of my living room. It was grainy, almost like a low-quality security camera shot, but the details were unmistakable. The figure was there, in my apartment. I turned around instantly, my eyes darting to every corner, every shadow. There was no one. The room was empty, but the photo on the screen told a different story. I deleted the picture, but as soon as I refreshed the app, it came back. The figure hadn't moved. It just stood there, watching. I threw the phone onto the couch, but it buzzed again, the sound drilling into my nerves. When I picked it up, there was a new message from the same blank account. This time, it said, "You can't turn it off." I tried. I turned off the phone, powered it down completely, but the moment I set it down, the screen came back to life. Instagram opened on its own. My profile picture changed again. This time, it was my face, pale and lifeless, with eyes that weren't mine. I shut the phone in a drawer and stepped away, but the buzzing didn't stop. It was relentless, like it was alive. My laptop powered on next, the screen lighting up across the room. I hadn't touched it. The Instagram login page filled the screen, and as I watched, the password field typed itself in. The profile opened automatically, and there it was again, my face, twisted and unnatural. I slammed the laptop shut, my frustration boiling over. But deep down, it wasn't frustration. It was fear. Whatever this was, it wasn't stopping. It wasn't something I could turn off. I paced the room, trying to make sense of it all. How had this started? Why was this happening to me? My mind raced back to the last few months, trying to find a moment where everything had shifted. And then I remembered. It was late one night, months ago. I'd been desperate to grow my Instagram following. Everyone else seemed to be gaining traction, while my account stagnated. A friend had mentioned a tool they'd found on the dark web. something that could boost followers and engagement instantly. I didn't think twice. I wasn't proud of it, but I used it. A few clicks, a payment, and suddenly my follower count exploded. I hadn't thought much about it at the time. It seemed harmless. But now, as the memory came rushing back, it didn't feel harmless at all. What if this was connected? What if I'd opened some kind of door without realizing it? I went back to my laptop, reopening Instagram. My hands were steady now, my fear shifting into something else, determination. If this was tied to the tool I'd used, there had to be a way to stop it. I clicked through my account settings, scanning for anything out of place. My archive caught my eye, a folder of every post I'd ever made. I opened it, scrolling through years of photos, each one a snapshot of my life. Then I found it. It was a photo I didn't remember uploading. A group of people, standing in a dimly lit room. They looked ordinary at first, just a group of friends smiling for the camera. But the longer I stared, the more wrong it felt. Their smiles were strained, their eyes hollow. There was something lifeless about them, like the photo had captured more than just their faces. I clicked on the image, zooming in on their faces. None of them looked familiar, but the timestamp on the post was from months ago, around the time I'd used the tool. My stomach churned as I noticed something else. A name was tagged in the corner of the image, faint but visible. One of the people in the photo was still alive. I searched the name immediately, my fingers moving faster than my thoughts. It led me to an old account, barely active, but it was enough. The profile belonged to a man named Joe. His posts were sporadic, mostly grainy pictures of random places. But the captions, those were what stopped me. It's still watching. Can't run from it. You're next. My throat tightened as I stared at the screen. Joe knew. He knew exactly what this was, and he was trying to warn people. I found his most recent post, a blurry picture of a dark room with a single caption, "Help." I sent him a message immediately, my hands shaking. "Joe, I need to know what this is. I think it's happening to me too. Please respond." I waited for what felt like hours, staring at the screen, willing him to reply. Finally, my phone buzzed. It was a voice message from Joe's account. I hit play, holding my breath. His voice was shaky, almost a whisper. "You can't stop it. I tried. I've been running for months, but it doesn't matter. It's everywhere. It knows you now, and it won't stop. It won't ever stop." There was a long pause, and then he said something that sent chills down my spine. "It's coming for you next." I didn't know what to expect when I knocked on the door. My heart thudded in my chest as I waited, the sound of my own breathing filling the silence. The house was old, run down, with peeling paint and broken windows that looked like they hadn't been cleaned in years. A part of me wondered if Joe would even answer. What if he'd already become another victim? What if I was too late? The door creaked open, and a man appeared in the doorway. He looked nothing like the photos I'd seen online. His face was pale, his eyes sunken, his hair a mess of gray streaks that looked like they'd aged him decades. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at me, his expression blank. "You're Joe, right?" I said, my voice trembling. "I need your help. It's happening to me too." For a moment, he didn't respond. Then he stepped aside, gesturing for me to come in. I hesitated, but I didn't have a choice. This was the only lead I had, the only person who might have answers. I stepped inside, and he closed the door behind me. The air inside the house was heavy, almost suffocating. The curtains were drawn, casting everything in shadows. Joe didn't say anything as he led me to a small living room, cluttered with papers, books, and empty coffee cups. He sat down on the couch and motioned for me to do the same. "You shouldn't have come," he said finally, his voice hoarse. "It knows now. It knows you're looking for answers." I swallowed hard. "I don't care. I need to know what this thing is and how to stop it." Joe laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Stop it? You don't stop it. You survive it, if you're lucky." He leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly together. "It feeds on us, on our need to be seen, to be liked, to be noticed. Every post, every like, every share. It's all fuel for it." I didn't understand it at first. I thought it was just a joke, some sick prank. But it's not. It's real, and it doesn't stop. I tried to keep my voice steady. "How did it start? Why me?" Joe shook his head. "It's been around for years, hiding in the background, waiting for people like us. People desperate for validation, for attention. You used something, didn't you? A tool, a service, Something to boost your account? I nodded slowly. Yeah, a few months ago. That's how it finds you, Joe interrupted. That's how it starts. It latches onto your account, your photos, your name, and then it takes over. I felt a chill run down my spine. There has to be a way to break it. There has to be. Joe hesitated, his gaze dropping to the floor. There's a way, he said quietly, but it's not easy, and it doesn't guarantee anything. What is it? I asked, leaning forward. I'll do whatever it takes. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Fear, regret, maybe both. You have to confront it. Go back to where it started, the place in the photo. I frowned. The photo from my archive? I don't even know where that was taken. You do, Joe said. Look closer. It's there in the background. A sign, a name, something. Find it and go there. That's where it's tied. That's where it has power. I didn't know what to say. The idea of going to that place, of facing whatever this thing was, made my stomach churn. But what choice did I have? I couldn't keep living like this. Joe stood up, walking over to a small desk in the corner. He picked up a piece of paper and handed it to me. It was a map, marked with a red circle around a location I didn't recognize. Go there, he said, and whatever you do, don't look back. I left the house feeling more confused and terrified than ever. The map was clutched tightly in my hand as I walked to my car. My mind racing. Could this really work? Could confronting it actually stop this nightmare? As I drove home, I started to notice things. Shadows moving in the corners of my vision, whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. The air felt heavier, pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't escape. When I got back to my apartment, things got worse. My phone buzzed constantly, notifications pouring in even though I hadn't opened any apps. The screen glowed with messages I couldn't read, the text distorted and glitching. The walls seemed to close in around me, and for a moment, I wasn't sure if I was still in my apartment at all. Then came the voice. It started as a low hum, barely audible, but it grew louder and clearer until it was all I could hear. It came from everywhere. My phone, my laptop, even the walls. You can't stop me, it said. I am you. I clutched my head, trying to block it out, but it didn't stop. The voice laughed, mocking me, taunting me. The walls seemed to ripple, like they weren't solid anymore, and I saw flashes of the figure from my profile picture. It was everywhere, in every shadow, every reflection. I grabbed the map and ran out the door. I didn't know where else to go. The place Joe had marked was the only lead I had, the only chance I had to end this. The drive felt endless. The roads stretched on forever, the darkness swallowing everything around me. My mind felt fractured, like I was slipping between worlds. The figure appeared in the rearview mirror, then vanished when I turned around. My phone buzzed relentlessly, the screen lighting up with images of my own face, twisted and distorted. When I finally reached the location, I could barely think straight. It was an abandoned building, crumbling and overgrown with vines. The air was thick with silence, the kind that made you feel like you were being watched. I stepped inside, the floor creaking beneath my feet. The walls were covered in graffiti, but one word stood out, scrawled in bold letters, "Leave." I ignored it, walking deeper into the building. The voice followed me, growing louder with every step. You can't escape me, it said. I am you. I reached the center of the building, where a broken mirror stood propped against the wall. My reflection stared back at me, but it wasn't mine. It was the figure from my profile picture, its eyes dark and hollow, its mouth twisting into a cruel smile. You've come far, it said, its voice echoing through the room. But this is where it ends. I stared at it, my breath caught in my throat. Who are you? I managed to say. What do you want? The reflection laughed, the sound chilling and hollow. I am you, it said again, and now you are me. Before I could react, the mirror cracked, the sound sharp and deafening. My reflection stepped out of the glass, standing in front of me. It smiled, leaning closer, and whispered, I am you now. When I stepped into the building, I felt a heavy weight pressing down on me. The air was thick, suffocating, and the silence was louder than anything I'd ever experienced. My phone buzzed in my pocket, the notifications relentless, but I didn't take it out. I knew what I would see. More images, more messages, more of it. I couldn't look. Not now. The map Joe had given me led to a room at the far end of the building. The hallway stretched out in front of me, dim and endless. the walls covered in peeling paint and strange markings. I walked slowly, my footsteps echoing with each step, my breathing shallow and uneven. I felt like I wasn't alone, like something was watching me, following me. But every time I turned around, there was nothing there. When I reached the room, the door was slightly ajar, and I pushed it open with trembling hands. Inside, the air felt colder, sharper. The room was empty except for a single table in the center, and on it was a framed photo. I recognized it instantly. It was the same group photo I'd found in my Instagram archive. The faces stared back at me, their expressions lifeless, their eyes hollow. I stepped closer, my eyes locked on the photo. I didn't want to touch it, but I knew I had to. This was it. This was what had started everything. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the frame, and the moment I did, the room shifted. The walls melted away, replaced by a swirling, chaotic void of colors and static. I was standing in the middle of a digital nightmare, the lines between the physical world and the digital one completely blurred. The table was gone, the photo gone, and I was alone. Or so I thought. "You shouldn't have come here," the voice said, echoing from everywhere and nowhere. It was the same voice that had been haunting me for weeks, only now it was louder, stronger. "You can't stop me." I turned in every direction, trying to find the source of the voice, but there was nothing, just the swirling chaos, the endless void. "What do you want from me?" I shouted. "Why are you doing this?" The voice laughed, a cold, hollow sound that sent chills down my spine. "You gave yourself to me," it said. "Your need for validation, your desperation for attention, it was enough, and now you're mine." "No," I said, my voice trembling. "You're wrong. I didn't know." "Knowledge doesn't matter," the voice interrupted. "You opened the door, you let me in, and now you will be the one to close it." I felt a sudden jolt, like something had grabbed me and pulled me forward. The void shifted, and I found myself standing in front of a massive screen. On it was the photo, the original photo, the one that had been haunting me from the start. The faces in the photo were no longer still. They moved, their expressions twisting and contorting, their hollow eyes staring straight at me. "You want to stop me?" the voice said. "Destroy it. Destroy the photo, and you sever my connection." I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. It couldn't be that simple, could it? I stepped closer, reaching out toward the photo, but as I did, the faces began to change. They morphed into people I knew, my friends, my family, even my own face, staring back at me with a look of fear and desperation. "This is what you'll lose," the voice said. "Destroy the photo, and they'll be lost to you forever." I hesitated, my hand hovering over the screen. Was it a trick? Was it trying to scare me into stopping? I didn't know. All I knew was that I couldn't let this thing win. I clenched my jaw and pushed forward, my hand smashing into the screen. The moment I touched it, everything exploded. The void shattered, the chaos consuming everything around me. I felt myself being pulled in every direction, my body breaking apart and reforming at the same time. The photo burned away, the faces screaming as they disappeared into the void. And then silence. I opened my eyes and found myself back in the room. The table was gone, the photo gone. Everything was still, quiet. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It was over. It had to be. But then I heard it, the buzzing, my phone vibrating in my pocket. I pulled it out, my hands trembling, and saw the notification, a new message from the blank account. I opened it, and my stomach dropped. The message was simple. "You delayed it, nothing more." I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. The relief I'd felt moments ago was gone, replaced by a sinking feeling of dread. It wasn't over. Not yet. I left the building, the weight of everything pressing down on me. When I got home, I didn't stop to think. I grabbed my phone, opened Instagram, and deactivated my account. Then I took the phone, walked to the nearest bridge, and threw it into the river. I watched as it sank beneath the surface, the water swallowing it whole. For the first time in weeks, I felt free. I started to rebuild my life, focusing on the things that mattered. I stayed offline, avoided social media, and tried to forget everything that had happened. But the signs were still there. An email notification with a strange subject line, a changed profile picture on an old account I hadn't used in years. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but I knew what it meant. It wasn't gone. It never would be. Have you ever experienced anything strange on social media? A message you didn't expect, a photo you don't remember posting? Share your story in the comments, and let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who loves a good scare.